I thought it was a decorative mirror until someone breathed from behind it. I remember the sound before anything else, a faint exhale, wet and close. It came from the wall, right behind my head, just as I was falling asleep. I had rented a small Airbnb for a week while visiting a friend out of state. The listing called it cozy, modern, nothing fancy. That part was true. It was a one-bedroom basement unit under an older house, white walls, laminate floors, a humming refrigerator that never stopped. There was a faint damp smell, like towels that never fully dried, and the wiring made a low buzz that seemed to move from socket to socket. The first night I noticed the mirror. It hung above the dresser, rectangular, cheap frame, slightly crooked. When I tried to straighten it, it wouldn't move. Whoever had mounted it had driven the screws tight into the wall. I let it be. Nothing else felt strange. Just a cold spot near the corner, and the way the air seemed heavier at night. The host had left a small note. Wi-Fi, downstairs guest 123. No loud noise after 10 p.m. Mirrors fixed to wall, do not remove. That last line stuck with me. Most hosts warn about smoking or pets, not mirrors. I laughed a little, took a shower, and watched a movie on my laptop until I fell asleep. Sometime after 2 a.m., I heard tapping. 3 slow knocks. Not from the door, from the wall behind the mirror. I sat up, listened. Nothing, only the hum of the fridge and the soft buzz of the ceiling light. Maybe a pipe, maybe the building settling. That's what I told myself. When I woke up the next morning, the mirror was straight, perfectly aligned. I was sure I hadn't touched it again. Everything about the place was ordinary in daylight. I made coffee, answered emails, went out for the day. But that night, lying in bed, I caught the smell of damp earth again, stronger this time. And the mirror's frame seemed to vibrate, just barely. I opened my phone's camera and hit record. Nothing usual, until I slowed the footage later. One frame showed my reflection smiling, while my face hadn't moved. The next 2 nights were quiet. Quiet enough that I started to believe I'd imagined the tapping. Still, every time I passed that mirror, I caught myself glancing at it a little too long. By the 4th night, the smell returned. Wet plaster, dust, and something faintly sour. I sprayed air freshener. It didn't help. That's when the tapping came back. Not random anymore. It had a pattern. Tap, pause, tap tap, like someone testing for a response. I lay still, eyes open in the dark, counting the seconds between each sound. When it finally stopped, I realized I'd been holding my breath. Morning light made the room feel harmless again. But when I brushed my teeth, I saw fingerprints on the mirror's lower edge, smudges too small to be mine. I wiped them off. A faint scrape echoed behind the wall, like something dragging against the studs. I told myself it was pipes. Old buildings do that. I repeated it until I half believed it. That evening, I propped my phone on the dresser, camera facing the mirror, and hit record before I went to bed. The room looked the same in the screen's reflection. Bed, doorway, mirror, no movement. When I woke up, the video had stopped after 3 hours. Battery dead. Nothing strange when I skimmed through. Until the last few seconds before the phone cut off. A single frame again. The reflection smiling, teeth showing, my face still asleep. I decided to check the mirror itself. I grabbed the edge and pulled. It didn't budge. The screws were buried in the wall. Still, something about the way it sounded, a hollow thump instead of a solid wall, made my stomach tighten. I got a screwdriver from the kitchen drawer. Each screw turned with a soft squeal, rust flaking off into my hand. When I pried the last one loose, a gust of cold air brushed my face. Behind the mirror was a square of plywood, painted the same color as the wall, barely noticeable until the light hit it at an angle. The edges were dark with grime. I slid my fingers under one corner and pulled. It cracked loose. The smell hit first. Stale air, sweat, rot. A small opening gaped behind it, leading into a narrow crawl space no wider than my shoulders. Someone had lined the inside with blankets, empty water bottles, food wrappers, a phone charger still plugged into an extension cord snaking through the hole. The flashlight from my phone picked out shoe prints in the dust, leading deeper into the dark. I whispered, "Hello?" Nothing. Just a low exhale, so faint I almost thought it came from me. The beam caught something glinting. A metal latch on the inside edge of the mirror's frame. Whoever had been in there could open it from the other side. My hand shook. I stepped back, mirror still dangling from one screw. Then I heard it. A soft scrape from inside the crawl space, followed by a slow breath out. That was enough. I backed out of the room, grabbed my bag, and left the apartment unlocked. I didn't look back until I was outside under the streetlight. The police arrived 15 minutes later. They went in with flashlights, talking low on their radios. When one of them came out, he asked if I'd gone into the basement. I told him no. He said they'd found an access panel down there, large enough for someone to crawl through. Whoever it was had been living behind the wall. For how long, they couldn't tell. They let me back inside once they were done taking pictures. The mirror lay on the floor, one corner cracked. An officer shined his light through the opening again. No one was there now, just a narrow tunnel that disappeared into the dark. He told me they'd followed the crawl space all the way to the basement. At the end was a hole punched through the concrete, leading out under the porch. That's how he'd come and gone. I stood in the doorway while they packed up their gear. The room looked smaller without the mirror. The wall behind it was scarred with nail marks. Someone had been pushing against it, testing the screws from the other side. They found a blanket rolled tight, half-eaten food, a small flashlight with dead batteries. No phone, no wallet, nothing to name him. When the police left, the host came down. He looked pale, kept saying he'd just bought the property. He didn't know anyone had been in the basement. He said the previous tenant moved out last winter after hearing things. I didn't stay long enough to ask what things. I packed my bag, avoided looking at the wall, and waited for my ride outside. Through the basement window, I thought I saw movement once. A faint shift in the shadows, but it was probably just my reflection. I stayed at a motel that night. Couldn't sleep much. The hum of the air conditioner kept changing pitch, and every time it did, I heard that same soft exhale. The next morning, a detective called. They'd checked the vents in the Airbnb unit. Each one led into the crawl space behind the mirror. If someone had been hiding there, they could hear everything inside the apartment. He said the dust on the venvers had been disturbed recently, like someone had been pressing their face against them. Breathing through, I ended the call and sat there for a long time, trying to remember every sound I'd heard that week, every breath that wasn't mine. That's when I realized, the first night, when the tapping stopped. I hadn't heard footsteps leaving, just breathing. Long and slow, coming through the vents. I never went back for the rest of my things. The host refunded the stay and took the listing down. A few weeks later, I checked again. New name, new photos, same basement layout. No mirror this time, just a blank wall where it had hung. Sometimes when I wake up at night, I think I hear it again. That slow, wet exhale just behind the wall. I thought it was a decorative mirror. The voice on the recording says, distorted by static, until someone breathed from behind it. The line loops once, twice, and then cuts off. Story 2. The basement that wasn't in the listing. The host said there was no basement, but something down there kept turning the lights off. I remember him saying it twice when we checked in. Just the main floor and the loft, that's all. No basement. He smiled when he said it, like he'd rehearsed the line. It sounded normal at the time. Everything about the place did. Big rural rental outside of town, 2 stories, wraparound porch, surrounded by trees so thick the GPS lost signal a mile before we got there. There were 5 of us, me, Aaron, Josh, Luis, and Kayla. A long weekend away from the city, just quiet and no schedules. The house felt newer than it looked in the pictures. Fresh paint, new appliances, but the wood under the stairs creaked like it remembered something older. The note on the counter listed the Wi-Fi trash pickup day and one rule in bold: do not open the door under the stairs. Josh laughed, said it was probably a cleaning closet. We all laughed with him. No one tried the handle. That first night we cooked, played cards, and drank more than planned. By midnight, the woods outside had gone completely black. No wind, no insects, just the steady hum of the fridge and, underneath it, something lower. A vibration you felt through the floorboards. I thought it was the water heater. When the lights flickered the first time, we all looked up at the same moment. A click, a short blackout, then everything came back on. Josh blamed the generator, though none of us had seen one outside. Before bed, I walked past the staircase to plug in my phone. The hum was stronger there, like standing above a transformer. The door beneath the stairs had a single padlock, old brass, new shine. I leaned close and heard what might have been air moving, or someone breathing slowly behind the wood. I didn't tell the others. We'd all had enough ghost stories for one night. The next day felt normal enough. Coffee, music, sunlight through the trees. No hum, no flicker. By afternoon, we stopped talking about the locked door. But that night, the power blinked again. Once, then twice. Each time the hum came back, low, pulsing, like it was climbing through the floor. Luis joked that the house was alive. Erin didn't laugh. She said it sounded like a generator under us, but the breaker box was on the opposite wall. At 2 a.m., I woke to silence. The hum was gone, and the air felt heavier. From the hallway, I saw Josh standing by the stairs. He didn't move when I whispered his name. After a few seconds, he turned, eyes wide but empty, and walked back to his room without a word. Morning came. He looked pale, slow to answer questions. When Kayla asked where he'd gone in the night, he said he didn't remember leaving bed. We checked his phone. The camera app was open. Last video timestamped 2:07 a.m. The footage showed him walking down the hall, stopping at the door under the stairs. Then static. Erin scrubbed through the clip, frame by frame. Just before it cut, the padlock was open. The door hung slightly ajar, and beyond it, only darkness. That evening, we set a camera facing the staircase. Luis wanted proof in case it was a prank. We sat in the living room with the live feed on the TV. Everything stayed still for nearly an hour. Then, a tremor through the floor. The hum again, louder than before, and the lights dimmed to a faint yellow. On the screen, the door under the stairs creaked open. Slow, steady, like someone was pushing it with care. We all turned toward the real staircase. The door was shut, padlock in place. When we looked back at the TV, a figure was stepping out of the darkness. Same height as Josh, same hoodie. It walked halfway into view, then the feed glitched. For a moment the image froze, but in that frozen frame its face wasn't his. Josh stood beside us the whole time. He backed away from the screen, shaking his head. "I'm right here," he kept saying. But the live feed showed him, or something that wore his shape, standing at the foot of the stairs, turning toward the camera. The image flickered. Every light in the house went out. When the lights went out, no one spoke. Only the hum stayed, steady, low, vibrating through the floor. Then a single click. The breaker tripped somewhere below us. I used my phone's flashlight. The beam caught dust hanging in the air like smoke. The door under the stairs stood open, padlock on the ground. Josh whispered that he hadn't touched it. No one believed him, but no one argued either. Erin called out, "Who's there?" Nothing answered, just that hum rolling underneath our feet. It faded after a few seconds like something retreating. We waited until morning to leave. The house was silent again, and the door was shut, locked back in place. None of us remembered doing it. Back in town, we watched the footage from the night before. Most of it was static, only the last few seconds were clear. The figure, Josh's shape, stood in the doorway, tilted its head once, then stepped forward until the screen went black. After that, the file corrupted. No thumbnail, no duration, just a blank icon named img028.mp4. 2 days later, the Airbnb listing was gone. Link dead. Host profile deleted. Erin tried to show the police the confirmation email. It bounced back, address not found. When they drove out to the coordinates, they said there was nothing there, just an empty lot, overgrown grass, no sign a house had ever stood there. Weeks passed. Everyone stopped talking about it. Kayla moved away. Luis changed his number. Josh deleted every picture from that weekend. I kept the app installed though. Sometimes I scroll through old trips when I can't sleep. That house still shows up under saved stays. Same photos, same title, rural getaway, 2 beds, quiet area. But when I click it, there's no description, just the single rule left in bold: do not open the door under the stairs. Last night, the app sent a notification. Your host has updated check-in instructions. No address, no map, just a new line of text. Basement access is now available. I deleted the app, but the sound stayed in my head, that low, slow hum climbing through the floorboards. Door hinges creak somewhere close, soft and deliberate. We thought we locked it, and the recording cuts out. Story 3. The host who never left. The host said she lived next door, but she knew what I was doing inside. I first heard it in my mind as I unpacked, whispered, overlapping in echoes like the words had bounced off the walls before I even read the text. I was alone in a remote cabin for a week, just me, the woods, and a small stream that cut behind the property. The cabin was listed as modern but cozy. Large windows, warm lighting, wood floors. Quiet. Too quiet. Her text started that evening. "Did you sleep well? How's the shower pressure?" Polite, friendly, a little over-attentive, but I thought she was just a conscientious host. She had photos of herself in the profile, smiling, waving, planting flowers outside the house. Everything seemed normal. That first night I noticed it. The way her voice, or at least her words, lingered in the messages. Not the tone, but the timing. A text exactly when I had stepped into the shower, another when I opened the fridge. I brushed it off. I told myself I was imagining coincidences. The cabin was old enough that creaks, drafts, and settling noises were normal. But then I started seeing small things. Tiny holes near the vents, little perforations behind picture frames. I'd catch faint reflections of light, like a camera indicator blinking just for a second. I checked every room quietly during the day. Nothing seemed out of place. The holes were small, easy to miss. The camera light flickered at odd intervals, barely perceptible. I started recording my own footage just to see if anything showed up. Her messages didn't stop. "Hope you're comfortable. Did you find the kitchen okay?" They made me uneasy in a way I couldn't explain. Not threatening, just present, watching, knowing. By the third night, I was sleeping lightly. Every sound made me pause. The wind through the trees, the creak of a floorboard, the faint drip from the bathroom faucet. And always the feeling that I wasn't as alone as I thought. By the fourth night, I couldn't ignore it anymore. The holes near the vents were larger than I remembered. Little scratches along the edges of the picture frames, as if someone had been moving them carefully. The faint blinking light returned. It was subtle, almost missed if I wasn't paying attention. But each time it flickered, I caught myself holding my breath. One evening, I was in the living room, watching a series on my laptop and heard a faint sound underneath the track of the dialogue. A breath. Slow, wet, quiet. I froze. The sound didn't match any of my recordings. I checked the vents. Nothing moved. I started noticing patterns. Her texts arrived shortly after I entered each room. The timing was too precise. She knew. The final straw came when I saw her live. I was checking the crawl space under the cabin stairs. Something told me to look. I knelt and shone my flashlight inside. A mattress, neatly folded blankets, small personal items, and a phone still recording facing the opening. I froze. On the screen, I saw myself sleeping from above. Every movement captured in real time. I hadn't noticed the camera pointed at the bed. Every blink, every turn. I whispered, almost to myself, "She's been here all along." The phone vibrated in the corner. A text. "Good night. Sleep well." The words made no sense. I was watching myself through her device, and she was still outside, somewhere. I didn't touch the phone. I stepped back, trying to ignore the low hum of the vent air. It had changed pitch, not mechanical anymore. Closer, heavier. Every instinct told me to leave immediately. I grabbed my bag, tried the door, and stepped outside into the dark. The cabin was silent. The woods swallowed all sound, but I could still feel her presence. Watching. Knowing. I called the police the next morning. Explained everything. The texts, the blinking light, the crawl space, the phone recording me sleeping. They asked for the cabin's address. It didn't exist. Not on GPS, not on the street registry, not on any official records. They said they couldn't locate the property. I tried to reach the host. Texts delivered instantly. No replies. The app, however, still listed her as a superhost. Profile photos smiling, waving, planting flowers outside, just like before. I couldn't bring myself to delete the app. Some nights, when I scroll through old trips, I check her profile. It's still there. The cabin's still listed under her name. The reviews all glowing. No one mentions the crawl space, no one mentions the hidden cameras. Every time my phone buzzes, I jump a little. Last night, a notification appeared. "Thanks for staying." I didn't open it. The sound echoed through the room like a soft tap or a breath. I remember whispering it aloud and hearing it answered in the quiet. The host said she lived next door, but she knew what I was doing inside. The line lingered, repeating itself in overlapping echoes before cutting off mid-breath. Story 4. The locked room upstairs. Every night at 2:33 a.m., the door upstairs unlocked itself. I first noticed it the second night in the house, a slow click almost imperceptible at first. Then the faint creak of hinges, the kind of sound that makes you sit up in bed and hold your breath. The wall clock ticked in the silence between each movement. I was staying in a countryside house for business. Old, 2 stories, oak floors, high ceilings, listed as recently cleaned, except for the dust. Footprints, small, dusty footprints on the stairs, leading to the locked room. I knew the house had been cleaned before my arrival. It didn't make sense. The hallway smelled faintly of damp wood and polish. Nothing else seemed out of place. But each night, the door would click. Lock disengaged. Alone. The first evening I went to check the room. The handle didn't turn. Locked tight. No sign of forced entry. I shrugged it off. Old houses make noises, I told myself. Hinges, settling, the wind. By the third night, I couldn't ignore it. Footsteps paced above me regularly. Short, deliberate, sometimes fast, sometimes slow. Always around the same hour. 2:33 a.m. I tried recording with my phone. Nothing seemed unusual in the footage, until later, when I watched it in the morning. The door upstairs unlocked by itself. Slowly, hinges squeaking, light flickering on inside. By the fourth night, I couldn't ignore it anymore. The footsteps had a rhythm, slow pacing at first, then a short pause, then faster again. Always above me. I set up a camera in the hallway, pointed directly at the locked room. Every night I recorded, hoping to catch something, anything that would explain the noises. The playback was unsettling. Each night, the door unlocked itself, slowly. Then light flickered on inside the room. Nothing else moved, at first, but one frame caught something I couldn't explain. A figure. Standing at the top of the stairs. Silent, motionless, watching me. I froze the frame, zoomed in. The face was blurred, but the eyes, they seemed to follow the hallway, following me. The next night, I went upstairs. Door still unlocked. I pushed it open slowly. The room wasn't a bedroom. It wasn't a guest room. It was a viewing room. The walls were lined with one-way mirrors, all facing the main floor. Shadows danced behind the glass from the candlelight in the hallway. The place smelled faintly of sweat and dust. On the floor, a scribbled note, "They like when you sleep early." I backed out slowly. Every instinct screamed to leave immediately. But I had to know, who had been pacing above me? Watching me? I never saw anyone in the room. Only their presence, recorded in the dust, in the slow creak of the hinges, and the faint flicker of the light. I never saw who locked the door again. Not in the footage, not in the hallway, not upstairs. The next morning, the house seemed normal. Sunlight spilling across the oak floors, quiet except for the ticking of the wall clock. No footprints, no dust. The scribbled note had vanished. I packed my things quickly. Every creak of the stairs made me flinch. Every shadow stretched across the hall like it was following me. I left the key on the counter. Weeks later, I tried calling the Airbnb host. Number disconnected, messages bounced. I thought I was done. I told myself it was just an old house making old noises, that the mirrors were remnants from a previous owner, that the note was just someone's prank. But every night at 2:33 a.m., I hear it in my dreams. The slow click of a lock disengaging, the faint creak of the door swinging open. The last tick of the wall clock morphs into a heartbeat, faster, closer, and then silence. Story 5, the listing that didn't exist. I never booked that stay, but the door unlocked for me anyway. It started with a notification on my phone, a booking confirmation for an Airbnb I didn't remember searching for. The address didn't look familiar. The map pin was somewhere I'd never been. I stared at the screen, faint city sounds in the background, cars, distant chatter, a siren far away. I swiped through the details. Everything looked legitimate. Price, photos, host name, rules, all normal. Curiosity got the better of me. I decided to go. Walked to the address. Door unlocked automatically as I approached. Inside, everything was identical to a previous Airbnb I'd stayed at months ago. Same couch, same throw pillows, same pattern on the wallpaper. Even the smell, subtle, faintly floral, like a candle I'd burned before. It didn't make sense. Nothing about this stay existed in my memory. And yet, the door had opened for me. I explored slowly. Every room looked untouched but familiar. The kitchen, the living room, the small bedroom upstairs. It was like stepping into a photograph of a memory I hadn't realized I'd taken. At first I told myself it was coincidence, maybe a cloned listing or reused decor, but then I noticed something else. Framed photos on the walls. Each one, me, sleeping. in different rooms, different beds, different angles. I froze. I started walking through the rooms slowly. Every photo on the walls showed me sleeping, in places I hadn't stayed yet in this house, angles that only a camera mounted somewhere high could capture. I checked the frames one by one. Each image seemed to refresh slightly when I wasn't looking. The timestamp updated. The light shifted in the room. The angle changed just a little. I tried recording with my phone. The camera picked up nothing unusual, no one visible. But footsteps echoed somewhere in the house, delayed, like they were recorded earlier and replaying. Sometimes they paused when I paused. Sometimes they followed me exactly. I froze in the bedroom upstairs. The last photo on the wall updated while I was still looking at it. A new timestamp, current time, current angle. The image showed me staring at the camera, wide-eyed, heart racing, and someone else holding the phone. I could feel the weight of their gaze. It wasn't a shadow, it wasn't a trick of the light. It was deliberate, watching. I backed out slowly, trying to stay calm. Every creak of the floor, every echo of a step felt amplified. The house felt alive, or maybe aware. I left the house as quickly as I could. Door clicked behind me, locking automatically. No one followed, no sounds, just the faint echo of my own footsteps fading down the path. When I checked my phone later, the listing was gone, completely deleted. No trace of the address, no record of the host. I told myself it was a prank or a glitch in the app. Maybe someone had cloned a listing. Maybe I'd imagined the photos. But I can't explain the last one. The photo that updated while I was still staring at it. The one where someone else held the camera. The timestamp matched the exact second I left the room. The angle perfectly aligned with my line of sight. Since then, the app has been quiet. No notifications, no new listings. Except sometimes late at night, I think I hear it. A faint click like a door unlocking itself. The echo of soft steps and a low, sustained hum. I didn't book it. It booked me.